cielo non li aiuterà, il vostro amore sarà distrutto.
Okay, so what we're going to do in this video is make a mold, and we're going to cast a couple of copies of this Guagu's foot. Not for this project, for another project, but while I was doing it, I thought, why not just demonstrate what we're going to do here. So, what I've got here is Pinky Seal's mold making kit, silicone molds. It's I'm just reading off the box, you can probably see that. A 2-component addition curing low viscosity silicone design for taking very fast impressions. So what we're going to do, if I can find my daughter's Lego pieces, is make a little cage for the part to sit in. And thank you to my little daughter for allowing me to use her Lego. Say hello.
Hello.
I'm going to go to the smaller blocks. So we're going to start again. So what we're going to do is build this little Lego house for these pieces. You want to give it about 1 centimeter or more, just to make the mold walls thick enough so they won't move too much when you're actually casting the resin. But let's go.
Il vostro amore sarà distrutto, il vostro cielo non li aiuterà, il vostro amore sarà distrutto.
So that's about the right height, maybe a little higher, but it'll be fine. So what I got here is just some blue tack. What I'm doing is just pressing that on the outside of the Lego cage. And what that's going to do is just stop any of the actual mold liquids there to come out, and also just holds the cage in place so it doesn't move around accidentally. Okay, we're getting there.
You'll get there, Daddy. Getting there.
Okay. Okay, so now one thing I like to do, which is optional, is I like to calculate the volume of Pinky Seal that we're going to need to pour in here. And the way I'll do that is I just get some rice in a cup, and I'll be back in a sec. So what I've done is I've filled the Lego block with some rice, and that will just be a guide to how much silicone mold I'm going to need to make. So I'm just going to, that's why it's a guide, you see, it's going all over the place. But I'll pour that into a glass, and that will tell me exactly how much mold I'm going to need to make. So let's tidy up a bit. Okay, so that tells me I need to make about 150 odd mil of the Pinky Seal. So let's go. Now with the Pinky Seal, one of the things I like about it is that it's a 1-to-1 mixing ratio. So inside the pack there's basically 2 bottles that you just sort of stir up a bit there and weigh equal portions. So 75, that means I'll make 75 mil of each of the 2 components. So I might make it, say, 80, make 160 just to give us a little for wastage. So I'm just going to stir these up a bit and I'll be back in a second. Okay, So I like to use a kitchen scale for this. So what we're going to do is just tear the actual container out, and we want to pour, say, 70 ml of pate. So 80 ml of pate. There we go. And I like to be as exact as I can. So 80 ml, 92 grams. So what we'll do is get another little container, which I had here, and tear this out and pour 92 grams of part B. Okay, so 92 grams of part B. Now what I want to do is just remeasure, just pour pate into part B. Now you've got a few minutes working time, and I'll tell you exactly what that is as soon as I mix this through and we'll wait for it to set. But you don't want to mix this too roughly, so you have basically what will be air bubbles everywhere. So just try to scoop out as much as you can. Now what I did is actually pour about just a gram or two less of this pink one. That way any that's left in the jar here won't drastically change the consistency or formula of the result. But you know, having said that, it is 1:1, and it's not really overly fussy. But so I'm just going to mix that until you get a nice pink consistency through the whole batch. And that's why I like to use something clear like this, that way you can see exactly what the result is and ensure that it's going to be a nice consistent mixture. Now, okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. That's looking good. So what I'm going to now do is just clean this up a bit, tidy up my workbench, get this ready, place it in the center there, and what I might do is just put a bit of blue tack on the bottom of it, just so it doesn't move around a bit. So there we go, maybe just a little bit more. But you want to make sure it's still sitting flush on the bottom there. Okay, and center it the position you like to have it in. And we're just going to slowly pour into a corner in the finest long stream that you can. That will just minimize any air bubbles in the actual mold. So just slowly let that happen. So that's the benefit of just measuring out the volume. I've literally got zero wastage there. So what I'm going to do is just give this a couple of gentle taps on the table, and what this will hopefully do is just bring any of these air bubbles to the surface. But really this has actually got more bubbles than I normally would do have in this kind of thing. Just I guess doing it for camera's purpose. It's made me rush it a little bit. This should be fine. Okay, just going back to the handling properties for Pinky Seal. Now, the pot life is 6 minutes, so once you mix part A and part B, you've got literally 6 minutes to work it and mix it in and pour it into your mold here. Now, it hardens in approximately 20 minutes, and that's based on, I guess, a mean average temperature being about 23 degrees Celsius. So the fact that we're in winter at the moment, and in my garage here, it's probably about 15 degrees at the moment. It should probably take about half an hour or so before this hardens. But what I'll do is I'll leave it for a good hour or two. I've got nothing else happening. We'll come back and pop that foot out of here and see what kind of mold we have. Okay, so it's been a couple of hours now, and it looks like the mold is well and truly dried. So we're gonna take off the Lego and see if we can pop out that part. So there's the negative. All we need to do now is mix the resin, pour it in, and we should have ourselves a nice little replica of the Guagu leg that we can use for the next project. Okay, now in much the same way, we're going to mix some of our Procast resin. And now this is a medium rigid polyurethane resin, if you can call it that. So what we have is again a part A and a part B, which is mixed in equal parts. So this one's got a pot life of about 5 minutes, and it can be uncasted in about or demolded rather, in about 1 to 3 hours. So again, what I've done is earlier I poured some water into there just to get a gauge of how much resin we needed, which worked out not to be very much at all. So I sort of got to eyeball the amount of resin required here, but most important thing is I'm going to weigh it. So I've just tear this, and I'll start with part A. Okay. Shake well. Now these should be shaken well. So we'll start with part A, and like I said, I'm just going to eyeball this one, but what is important is that we have a 1-to-1 mixture. So I'm up to about, I reckon that'll do it. So 17 grams of part A, and I'll do the same with part B. So another 17 grams. $15, $16, and 1 drop for the road. There we go, perfect. Now we're just gonna mix this in, and you really want to be gentle here and try to get as many of the air bubbles out as you can, because this is really where you will have problems with your mold, with your cast rather, with these small little air bubbles. But we'll do our best to minimize it. Now I've used this before and it's actually not too bad. I casted some seats for a Volkswagen using this resin, and it worked well. And you can see there that there's really not very many big air bubbles at all. So what we want to do again, being cautious of the pot life of this thing, is get a nice thin stream happening, poured into the corner of a mold, and letting that just flow through the rest of that part. It's probably better just on that little dot there. And just let it go all the way to the top. Just let it slightly overflow. There we go. That will just dry up as a bit of flash that we'll have to get rid of. Now again, just some gentle little taps should help those air bubbles get to the top and away from the cast. Okay, so we'll let that sit and tap away for a little bit longer, but I won't bore you with that. And we'll come back in a couple of hours when it's all ready to go. Have fun. Now, couple of hours now, and the resin is nice and set. Now one of the things I did forget to do is put some mold release agent on this, so hopefully we won't have too many issues. It should be alright really, but to prolong the life of your molds I highly recommend you do use mold release, so I'll be definitely doing that for the next one. So let's pry this little thing out and see how it came. Just want to be extra careful here, especially because we didn't use any release agent. Really don't want to wreck this mold. And mold looks fine. And there goes the first one done. Couple of little air bubbles, but really that is looking pretty good. So just get rid of this flash and we'll tidy this up. Just like every resin, we'll just cut off that plug. Whoops. We'll cut that plug off. We got a really nice looking guagu foot. What do you guys think? Now for the next one, we'll definitely get some of this mold release in here. So the way to do that, just spray it. And that's off camera. So just spray a little bit of that. That'll make it nice and lubricated, so the next bit of resin will come off really nicely. Okay, now this has been about an hour or so, so we're just gonna check it out. And out she pops. And that is just about perfect. So just a bit of flash again like we talked about, but that's normal meme casting resin. Bit of mold release on there, which you need to wash with a bit of soapy water. A couple of tiny little air bubbles here on the side, but nothing that a small coat of primer won't take care of. So there you have it. Let's just clean this up. It's still a bit soft actually, so I won't pry that too much. But there they are. My two guagu boots that will feature hopefully in another project down the track. I hope you learnt a little something new, and thanks for watching, and we'll talk soon. Ciao.